Okay, are we live? Can you hear me? Hey, folks, Tim Miller here with Lionheart, and I see we've got a few coming in. Um, I just wanted to take a few minutes on this Easter weekend and first say thank you for, um, jumping in and this whole thing on how to be more responsive. To be honest, I get a lot of questions now about how to maintain safety and security and kind of where you should be going, not going. And folks, here's the thing that I really want to first encourage you to think about. Hey, welcome, Kathy. Good to see you. Um, I wanted to talk to you real quickly at the beginning of the Easter weekend and just talk to you about some simple things in light of some things going on, as many of us will be celebrating Easter and going into large churches, small churches, in between churches. And I just wanted to kind of talk to you real quickly about just some things to think about, how to stay safe. And for those of you that know me, I'm all about, trying to be prepared and safe. And quite frankly, a lot of things are changing. And so I get a lot of folks that ask me questions. And I thought, I really want to start doing some live stuff just so I can field your questions. But I do want to talk to you about how to stay safe, how to think about kind of going to venues now where people are gathered in large numbers, and what are some things we can do just to be wise and prepared. Because folks, I want to be really clear. I never ever want to encourage fear or encourage people not to go places. I certainly think it's wise to consider where you go now and to think about the things that are going on just through the lens of wisdom and preparation and keeping your family safe. And I know when I go to larger venues or into cities, I'm thinking differently now. And so, as I always do, I just wanted to talk to you real briefly about some things, like we always do on the channel, before, during, and after an event. Well, let's talk about before, during, and after maybe going to large venues. What are some things we can think about? And folks, I know you've heard this a million times, and I think I know you get it because you're listening. And there are a lot of things before anything happens that we can do to prepare ourselves. And the first is to honestly think about training and preparation and thinking through what would I do if. Many of you have heard this many times, and you've heard me say it, but having a plan it is so important. Being prepared and trained, maybe having some medical training, maybe having, some training that would help you defend your family and those kinds of things. But in today's world, it's essential. Let me tell you why this is so important. In March 2016, that's right, I'm getting old, I'm forgetting. We had trained a church, a large church in Tennessee, and we had trained their ushers and their greeters as well as their security teams in things like how to be alert, how to be aware, what looks strange, how do you deal with it? Two things basically. What to look for and what to do if you see it. And so we trained this church, and it was Easter Sunday, 2016. The last service, by the way, their sanctuary was 7,000 people. And so you can imagine at the end of the day, they're tired, they're, exhausted, and it's the last service. And a dear, precious greeter that is talking to people coming into the church. Hi, welcome. Notices a young man who comes in acting very strangely, avoids eye contact, does not acknowledge her greeting, and that strikes her funny, especially based on some of the things we talked about. So she turns and watches the young man, and she notices that in his pocket is what appears to be a weapon. And so, because she was observant, she paid attention. She notified a pastor that was walking by. He notified the security director. And by the way, the young man had a backpack on as well. And he was kind of steady going towards the balcony level, so that it caused a lot of concern. And it just happened totally by the grace of the Lord that the security director was able to intercept him, was able to ask him questions. He was able to remove a loaded weapon out of his pocket, which is not in and of itself a problem, but with the strange behavior, it was a problem. And then he told him he would put the weapon in his backpack and ask him to take it back out. And he did that intentionally. Well, when they opened the backpack, there was a 300 blackout rifle. And a lot of concerning factors in this led up to the FBI getting involved. But here's the bottom line. That potential attack was stopped by one person who knew what to look for and what to do if she saw it. And that's what I would encourage all of us today and over the weekend, and quite frankly, from now forward. And I want to talk to you a little bit about the venues that you're driving up to, especially if they're large venues. I would encourage you to do a few things, folks. And that's number one, make sure that when you're pulling into the venue, you're not distracted. It's easy to be on phones or caught in conversation. Be alert, be aware, pay attention. Now, why do I say that? Well, in almost every significant terrorist attack, there have been a number of folks doing operational surveillance ahead of time. They're paying attention, trying to figure out what's happening, especially, knowing that they're going to be conducting an attack there. So when you're driving in, if you're just simply paying attention, noting folks that appear, out of the ordinary. And what it appears doesn't mean that it always is that. But if you notice a vehicle occupied with multiple people, nobody getting out, nobody coming in, that's when you begin to ask the next question. Okay, is this really, out of the ordinary, or is this just somebody waiting for somebody else? And so I think it's really important that as we're coming in, we're paying attention, we're looking around, we're just being observant. We're being able to see something, hopefully, that could be helpful to stopping an event. Because remember, folks, security is all about stopping an event. We don't want it to happen and then try to clean up the mess. Boy, if we could stop it in advance, if we could see that car out there or see a suspicious situation, and stop it, wouldn't that be amazing? And so as we think about going to larger venues, it's important that we're alert and aware, even driving in, paying attention to what's going on. And then, of course, as we enter, we get out, we're attention, we're smiling. I'm not trying to suggest that we're some kind of, special agent on surveillance detail. We're just being alert and aware. And folks, if you don't know, if it's a church, if you don't know the folks that are involved in security, maybe that would be a good step, is just say, hey, I'd like to know who to talk to. Because communication in the middle of things can be very important. So again, you pull up to the venue, you're alert and aware. You come into the lobby, and boy, this is a big one, folks. I've said this many times, but if you're going into a venue that you haven't been to before, remember the 4 big questions. First and foremost, where are the exits? Wherever you are, note them, pay attention. Why? Because research has shown that for those that identify a second and a third exit during an actual emergency, your chances of survival go up 80%, 80%. So that's a pretty good reason to have identified a second or third exit. So we're looking for exits. The second thing we're looking for is, what are people doing? We had a recent incident at Lakewood Church where very quickly things got out of control because a lady with some mental health issues and a rifle came in. And so it's very important, if you notice, unusual, suspicious things going on, that you are very aware, alert, and you have a program or a plan for what to do with that information. So the third thing is, where would there be if I had to hide my family, if I had to seek cover or concealment, where would that be? And then fourth, probably the most important, is what's my plan to get out? How do I get out of here with my family in circumstances that are going to be perhaps very, very dangerous and fast moving? So, folks, then we move into the sanctuary, and folks ask me a lot, there's a reason why the Secret Service has specific posts. They put people in strategic places. That's so that they can safeguard those that they're entrusted with. And the same thing holds true to you and I. Many people ask me, well, where should you sit in an auditorium? Where's the safest places? Well, unfortunately, there's no pat answer, but there is an answer generally that I always suggest, and that's try to be on an aisle if possible, to where you can evacuate or move, because if you're pinned into the center areas and people begin to freeze, there's not much you can do with that. So when you go into a larger venue, try to sit on the aisle, or any venue actually, try to sit on an aisle. People ask me, do I sit up front? Do I sit in the back? There's arguments for both sides. If they have security team members, they may be sitting up front or they may be in the back. And that would adjust where I'm going to sit, because if they're prepared to at least slow down or interdict a problem, then that'll give me time to get my family out. Or, if I'm trained, prepared, and ready and skilled to actually make a difference and to come in. So where you sit in the auditorium, remember, especially if it's a venue you have not been to, folks, make sure you identify where those exits are, and then make sure you've already kind of mapped out a plan for how to move, how to get your family out if you have to, yourself and your family, and others. Obviously, this is for others as well. So you're in the sanctuary, and you're in a strategic place. Many folks like to sit in the rear and in a corner, because then you have a visual pretty much the whole sanctuary. And the only concern with corners is you're limited in exits, possibly, depending on the venue. So think about that. I mean, those are things that need to be in your mind, worked out, so that hey, I can move if I have to. And then that plan for getting out, as we saw in Moscow, as we've seen in Lakewood, these incidents are happening. And again, we're not afraid, we're not fearful, but we are going to be wise and prepared, because we want to help as many people as we can. Now, let me say this to you: if you are armed, you need to be very, very mindful of things. The 4 rules of gun safety are always the 4 rules of gun safety. And unfortunately, in excited situations, people can begin to disregard those. We never point a weapon at anything we don't want to shoot. Obviously, in a crowded sanctuary, that's a problem. We want to be very mindful of our trigger. We don't want to have our finger on the trigger at any point unless we're willing to shoot. We need to be aware of our backdrop and beyond. And I just want to, as we think and talk through those, in a crisis situation, remember that 90% of the skills needed are right here. And so having that plan, being able to act calmly, being able to speak calmly, and we go into a lot of training when we train in organizations, because there's 2 things you better do right away. And this is based on science. Number 1 is you better speak positive words. Did you know that if you speak positive words in the midst of a crisis, that it actually connects the brain synapses to the area of your brain that responds to crisis, and it tells the brain it's going to be okay. Why? Because you spoke that it's going to be okay, and that in essence begins to calm your whole body and your nervous system down to where you can function. And that's scientific. That's many will say, well, that's a spiritual thing, and I would agree, it probably is. But words like "it's going to be okay," "we're going to be okay," that is so important, folks. Speak words right out of the bat. Get that brain oriented towards victory. And the second thing is maintaining breathing. Do you know many people in a crisis, they begin to lose their breathing, they hyperventilate, and then pretty soon they're in serious trouble because now that precious oxygen that you have, that your body needs, you don't have. So we do what's called box breathing. We breathe in 4 seconds, hold it 4 seconds, breathe out 4 seconds, breathe, and you basically maintain control of your breathing. Nobody's going to be counting 4 seconds, by the way, but just remember that breathing is huge. Beagle Mom asks, what is the best training for self-defense? What do the Israelis use? The Israelis use a program called Krav Maga, and it is a very similar program to what we did in the Secret Service. It's it's not necessarily martial arts oriented as much as it is street fighting oriented. In other words, quickly trying to defeat an opponent. With decisive moves. But let me say this about a lot of folks are asking me about self-defense, and that's a great question to ask because I do think we all need to have self-defense training. But remember that self-defense training is predicated on us being healthy and fit, because there are certain things. My friend Matt Pasqualini, he talks about it all the time. Certain tools you can use, obviously, to defend yourself, certain protocols that you can, or responses that you can use to disable an attacker pretty quickly. But let me just say this about self-defense. A lot of folks, they want to do less potentially damaging things. Judo, jiu-jitsu, and Brazilian jiu-jitsu is big. And let me just say this. Any kind of self-defense training that you have is better than none. And so these days, I think we have to say, okay, these are different times. And so we've got to look at our fitness first. We've got to look at our health first, because I assure you, and we train everybody from Fortune 500 companies to to churches, and I will tell you that without a doubt, being able physically to respond in the midst of crisis has a lot to do with your physical fitness and your health. And we all fight the battle of the bulge. We all fight to stay engaged. But we do know that the single greatest thing you can do for your brain health is to be in shape, to work out, to stay focused on being prepared for that. It's kind of cool, some of the research that was done at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. They actually put brain monitors on students going through, and they did this study called Human Performance. And it was a fascinating study because they kind of identified which parts of the brain, hi Micah, good to see you, brother, respond in the middle of a crisis. And I got to tell you, it was fascinating because what they figured out is your heart rate in a crisis will affect your ability to do things in a crisis. And for those of you that work out, I try to work out, and monitor my heart, because I want to make sure that my target heart rate is up to a point where it's so normal for my heart to be there that in the middle of a crisis, my heart doesn't give out on me. And here's what can happen. At a certain point, depending on your fitness level, your heart begins to affect your body, and you lose like fine motor skills, your ability to do certain things, unless you're trained and prepared. And even further than that, at a higher heart rate, somewhere around 150 to 160, unless it's monitored and controlled because you're in shape, you begin to lose gross motor skills, which means your ability to run and actually use your hands and arms and all those things begin to fade. So we want to make sure that we're very fit before the incident. I know you may be saying, well, I'm older and I'm not fit. The only thing I would say is this: I just encourage you, wherever you are on the journey, go to the next level. Because as you get into situations, your ability to respond will be affected by your physical fitness. So now you're in the event and everything goes well, and you're leaving. Let's say Easter Sunday. Is it over? No, it's not over, because you still have to navigate the parking lot and you still have to pay attention. And folks, let me just say this again. You've heard me say it at nausea. Your security depends on how alert and aware and prepared you are. It's just that simple. And so it's easy to take the phone and get distracted. It's absolutely normal to want to see that text that you just have to see right now. And all I would say to you is, these days, it's better to be safe than sorry. Let's be alert and aware. Somebody asked me, well, when do you call 911? And here's the good news. You call 911 anytime you want. If it's suspicious, if it causes you to go, wait a minute, something's not right there, then that's what the police get paid to do. They can check it out, or maybe even if it's a church or another organization with security, maybe you identify it to them. But folks, here's the point. Don't be hesitant to report something suspicious. Because that's what back in the day when I was a police officer, that's what we did. We checked it out. It's nothing. Don't worry about it. And guess what? The police don't get upset. That's their job. And they're going to go do what they need to do. They would much rather be warned ahead of time than they would to come after the fact and find out that there was information out there that could have helped prevent something. So after the fact, we're still alert and aware, and we're also paying attention as we're leaving. Maybe somebody across the street, maybe there's something else going on. But that whole idea of situational awareness is so very important. And so before, we're training, we're preparing, we're working out, we're making sure. Oh, by the way, let me say this about that too. Many of you have heard me say there's a program that the Department of Homeland Security sponsors called Stop the Bleed. And it's about a 2.5, 3 hour program that basically teaches people how to apply tourniquets, how to apply pressure bandages, to help save someone's life until paramedics and rescue can get there. Let me tell you, this came out of the Boston bombing, when you had horrific injuries and very few people knew how to stop them from bleeding, because you can bleed out very, very quickly if you don't have the training. And so this is just kind of a life hack. Check your area for Stop the Bleed courses. I know for a while fire departments were running them for free. I'm told that people, hey Nick, good to see you. Thanks for jumping in. I'm told that people have been trained for free. But even if it's kind of like CPR, folks. If you have Stop the Bleed training, and then you say, you know what, I have 3 members of my family, I might have 3 Stop the Bleed kits, or 3 tourniquets even, Cat 5 tourniquets. Guess what? If it happens and you have 3 tourniquets, you may save 3 lives with those tourniquets. So that's the preparation part I'm talking about for today's changing, very fast changing country. And when I was with the Secret Service, it was all about training, preparation, training, preparation, training, preparation. And yet I realized that's really where we should be today. We should be trained and prepared and wise, not fearful, not panicky, not living life, but we should be alert, aware, and wise. And so Stop the Bleed is another good one. CPR courses. in today's world. And then again, when you get to the venue, we're identifying, exactly where the exits are, what are people doing, where could there be cover or concealment, and the difference. One hides you from fire and gunfire, and one protects you from gunfire, which would be cover. So I think, as you navigate the service, then you go in and then you look preferably for an aisle seat. I can't really give you a, hey, you should sit here or there, because really that's based on the layout. I will say that, aisle seats typically are way better because you're not navigating people in the middle of a crisis. You'll be able to get out quickly. And so I have a question from Florida Hiker. Hi, Florida Hiker. I know you. Could you go over a few pointers on what to do in a hostage situation? Yeah, I'm assuming you mean if you are one of the hostages. Let me. That's a bad news thing. If you are one of the hostages, and here's what I would say, folks. One of the key things to not being a hostage, but you could be anyway, is to be so alert and aware that when things happen, you begin to respond. And that goes back to the evacuation. If you're in a situation, again, on that aisle, and all of a sudden people are bursting in to take people hostage, that's where your avenue of escape, because there's going to be a lot of confusion in those first 2, 3, 4 seconds. And so that's when, if you move fast and you have a plan, you may be able to get out. If you're taken hostage, the biggest, thing you can do, honestly, is to look wisely. Remember that plan that you had beforehand for opportunities, because your greatest chance of escaping a hostage situation is likely within the first 2 or 3 or 4 minutes, because the hostage takers are trying to figure out their plan. And if you have one ahead of time, that's the other thing, is just basic de-escalation, folks. I can't stress enough how de-escalation can be used to take folks that are going up and down. Let me tell you Tim's little version for de-escalation. I've studied all the Cal Post stuff. I studied almost every de-escalation training that I can, because it's so important. And I've kind of boiled it down to 3 things, 3 C's, simple 3 C's. I'm a Marine, I have to keep it simple. And that's the first thing you have to do, is connect with somebody that's angry. Well, what do you mean, Tim? Well, if he comes in, she's going up, she's angry, you can see it all over. First thing you can do is, you need to do is connect. Hi, I'm Tim. And most time, if you have a smile and you're connecting with somebody, that will begin instantly to kind of hopefully pause the escalation. And then the second thing we want to do is communicate. Hey, what's going on today? How can I help? Man, I'm sorry. That's hard. Obviously, not necessarily in a hostage situation, but just in general. Communicating with them begins to take that steam out of the tea kettle, and now they're communicating. And then the third is cooperating, helping them to find a solution. So basically, in de-escalation situations, remember, you want to connect, you want to communicate, and then you want to cooperate with them and help them. So back to Florida Hiker's question on the hostage situation. The key is not being taken hostage, because, and unfortunately that's happening, folks. That Florida Hiker, that's a really good point, because that's exactly what happened in Moscow. We're starting to see more of that mentality, which goes back to having a plan, having it rehearsed in your mind. And folks, let me just say this. I am not talking about trying to be James Bond everywhere you are. I'm talking about you having a mental alertness, a preparedness, a plan, and training to execute that. Because here's the reality. I really want to encourage you. It may be not just you that's being saved. It may be hundreds of others. dozens of others. If you stay calm, cool, collected, if you're able to communicate clearly because you have a plan, hey guys, come on, let's go this way, because you're going to see a whole variety of people going into shock, and this is where you, being the person that's prepared, can make everything different, and that's my hope and prayer. So. Good question, Kathy. How do you get a Stop the Bleed course near you? What I would recommend is if you just Google. Actually, the better thing is to contact your local fire department and just say, "Hey, do you know anybody doing Stop the Bleed training, or are you doing it?" I know for a while fire departments were doing it, and I found churches often will offer it as well. It really doesn't cost much for anybody to do it, to put it on. Our company trains it usually at the corporate or mega church level, but I would reach out to your fire department. And Kelly, it's good to see you. Thanks for your faithfulness to it. And so, folks, I think there's so much to think about this Easter weekend, because there are going to be large gatherings. And again, I'm not saying it, the FBI is saying it, be alert, red lights flashing. Everybody is, raising the alert levels. And so I just hope everybody on this channel is wise, prepared, and safe. That's my purpose. That's why I do what I'm doing. I'm trying this live thing because I really want to answer your questions when I can. We'll continue doing the videos, but I really think it's a new season in America, and I think we need to be prepared. Thank you, Sharon. I appreciate it. The the key to preparedness, though, remember, is before the event. Remember, we want to train, we want to be physically fit, we want to be skillfully prepared, we want to have whatever equipment we need. I get a lot of questions from folks carrying firearms, and I just want to say this, and I say it directly because it needs to be said. Just because you own a firearm does not mean you're prepared to use a firearm. Let me say that again. Just because you own a firearm doesn't mean you're prepared to use a firearm. Well, what does that mean, Tim? Well, it means that we've got to have, like anything else, we've got to have good, solid training. Because I will tell you that if you have the weapon, but you don't have the training or the mindset to use the weapon, it can be, in fact, a hindrance. There have been cases where people have frozen and the weapon's been taken from them. Well, we don't, that's the worst case scenario. So, we want to be wise, we want to be prepared, but we want to be trained. And especially in firearms, that training needs to involve training, not just sterile at a range. It needs to have some use of force decision making, some stress, because that's what's going to happen in a real situation. So, hi, Paula. Thank you for joining us. I appreciate it. And Kathy, thank you so much. I appreciate your prayers because it's getting interesting. So, folks, if there are no other questions, this is my first live. Hope I didn't mess it up too much, but it really is an honor to get to partner with you. And I hope and pray that everybody has a safe and a wonderful Easter. And we'll see you next time. And again, if I can help you with anything, please let me know. And God bless you all. Stay safe.